Lean in and smell your own arm right now. That faint, almost nothing scent, that's a modern invention. Your ancestors never smelled like that. Not in 300,000 years. They smelled of wood smoke, of sweat that never washed off, of blood and earth and the bodies pressed around them every night. To you, an ancient human would be almost unbearable to stand next to. But here's the strange part. To them, that smell wasn't disgusting. It was information. It told them who you were, who you'd been near, and whether you were about to get sick. The question is what we lost when we washed it all away. And to understand what we lost, you first have to throw out something you were probably taught. The idea that humans have a bad sense of smell. You've heard it before. Dogs are the real smellers with their wet noses and their hundreds of millions of scent receptors. Humans, the story goes, gave up on smell long ago in exchange for big brains and good eyesight. It's a tidy story. It's also wrong. In 2017, a neuroscientist named John McGann traced this idea back to a single 19th century anatomist. The man looked at the size of the human smell center, decided it was small, and concluded we must be terrible at smelling. Everyone repeated it for 150 years. But when scientists actually tested it, humans turned out to be extraordinary. You have around 400 different types of smell receptors. By some estimates, you can tell apart close to 1 trillion distinct scents. People have even followed a scent trail across a field on their hands and knees. You are not a bad smeller. You are a phenomenal one who simply grew up in a world with almost nothing left to smell. And here's why that matters so much. Of all your senses, smell is wired into your brain differently. When you see something or hear something, the signal takes a detour first. It passes through a relay station that sorts and processes it before it reaches the deeper parts of your brain. But smell doesn't wait in line. The nerves in your nose run almost directly into 2 of the oldest structures you own, the ones that handle emotion and memory. This is why a single whiff, sunscreen, a certain perfume, the inside of an old house can drop you straight into a memory. So completely that, for half a second, you are actually there. No other sense does that. Smell skips your thinking brain entirely and goes straight for the part of you that feels. For your ancestors, the world of scent was never background noise. It was emotional. It was personal. It was the deepest layer of reality they lived in. So picture actually being there. Step into a human camp 30,000 years ago, and the smell reaches you before anything else. Wood smoke soaked into hair and skin and hide, because the fire never fully went out. The thick, fatty smell of animals being butchered and cooked, drying skins, blood, earth. And underneath all of it, the warm, dense smell of 30 human bodies that have never once touched soap, sleeping in a heap for warmth. Now here's something most people don't know. Sweat itself is almost odorless. The smell we call body odor isn't the sweat at all. It's what happens when the bacteria living on your skin feed on it, especially the thick, milky sweat from glands in your armpits and groin, the ones that only switch on at puberty. That smell isn't a malfunction. It's a signal, a broadcast your body starts the moment you become old enough to reproduce. And here's the twist. They probably couldn't smell most of it. Spend long enough inside a scent, and your nose simply stops reporting it. It's why you can't smell your own home, even though a visitor notices it the second they walk in. To an ancient human, the camp didn't reek. It smelled like nothing. It smelled like home. What their noses stayed sharp to was change, a new face, a trace of blood, the first faint hint that someone was getting sick. Because that smell was doing real work. The first job was survival. In 2014, researchers at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden triggered an immune response in volunteers using a harmless bacterial compound. Within just a few hours, the sweat those people produced smelled noticeably worse to everyone else, more aversive, more wrong, even though the volunteers themselves still felt fine and looked fine. Sit with that for a second. Your nose can detect the immune system switching on inside another person's body, hours before there is a single visible symptom. For an ancestor with no medicine, no germ theory, no idea what a virus even was, that mattered enormously. The instinct that makes you wrinkle your nose and lean away from someone who smells sick isn't rudeness. It may be one of the oldest disease detection systems we have, quietly steering you away from infection before you have any idea why. But here's where it gets genuinely strange. Because your nose wasn't only keeping you away from the sick, it was helping you choose who to love. In 1995, a Swiss biologist named Claus Wedekind ran one of the most famous experiments in the history of smell. He had a group of men wear the same plain t-shirt for 2 nights. No soap, no cologne, nothing to mask their natural scent. Then he had women smell the worn shirts and rate them. The results were stunning. The women consistently preferred the smell of the men whose immune systems were the most genetically different from their own. They had no idea they were doing it. They were just sniffing shirts and saying which ones they liked. But their scent preferences lined up with genetic compatibility, steering attraction toward partners who could give their children stronger, more varied immune systems. Think about what that means. Before a single word was spoken, before anyone learned anyone's name, a part of your ancestors may already have been making judgments through scent alone. Who to trust, who to avoid, who to fall for, and that machinery did not disappear. It is running in you right now. In fact, you are using it constantly without realizing. A mother can pick out her own newborn by smell alone within days of giving birth, and the baby can find her the same way. That newborn smell isn't just pleasant to her. It lights up the reward centers of her brain, almost like a drug. Evolution made her chemically hooked on her own child. When you are frightened, the chemistry of your sweat changes. The people around you can unconsciously smell that fear and grow more alert themselves, as if the alarm spreads through the air. And here is a strange one. In 2015, researchers at the Weizmann Institute filmed people greeting each other with an ordinary handshake, then watched what they did with that hand afterward. Again and again, they brought it back up toward their face, often right to the nose. They were sniffing it, sampling the other person's chemical signature, completely unaware they were doing it. You have almost certainly done this today. The most ancient way of getting to know a stranger is still happening, hidden inside a polite handshake. Even the perfume and cologne we reach for is a kind of confession. We never stopped caring about scent. We just grew ashamed of our own and started wearing someone else's over the top of it. So the smell of an ancient human was never just filth. It was a language, a constant, rich, invisible stream of information about health, family, fear, and desire, written in chemicals, read by a nose far more powerful than you have ever been led to believe. Every single person was broadcasting, and everyone was listening all the time without a word. And then, in a stunningly short stretch of time, we turned the whole thing off. Soap became common. Then, around the start of the 20th century, came deodorant and antiperspirant, products built specifically to silence the signal. But here's the part that should bother you. People didn't simply decide on their own that their smell was shameful. They were taught to. In 1919, an advertising campaign for a product called Odorono helped popularize the idea that natural body odor was a hidden, shameful flaw, something embarrassing, something that could quietly ruin your life. It worked spectacularly. Within a single generation, millions of people had been convinced that the way humans had smelled for 300,000 years was an emergency to be scrubbed away every morning. We didn't discover that we smelled bad. We were sold the idea, and we bought it completely. But your body never signed off on any of it. You still lean in and breathe a person in when you hold them close. You still find an old, worn shirt of someone you love strangely comforting. And if they're gone, that smell can break you years later. A coat pulled from the back of a closet. And for 1 second, they are standing in the room again. You still pull back without knowing why. From a person who smells faintly wrong. You still bring your hand toward your face after you shake someone else's. The oldest language humans ever spoke is still running quietly underneath all the soap and the perfume, still reading the people around you, still trying to tell you who is healthy, who is afraid, who is family, and who you might love. We didn't lose the sense. We just stopped listening and washed away almost everyone left to talk to.